The day she said it, the light through the glass walls had turned the whole living room into water. She stood near the window, her hand resting on the cold pane, and whispered, "The house isn't ours." I wanted to ask who she meant by ours, but the words stayed in my throat like splinters. Father had been gone 3 months, though his shoes still lined the hallway as if time was waiting for permission to move. She kept the same routine: coffee at 6, window open by 7. No sound except the ticking of the clock he once fixed. I told myself I hated her composure, but what I really feared was how she seemed to belong here more than I ever did. Some nights, I'd hear her walking through the corridor barefoot, stopping at the same step that creaked, as if counting the distance between us. The silence after her footsteps always felt heavier than the sound itself. Once, I found her in Father's study, turning the pages of his old ledger. Her finger traced a name that wasn't his or mine. I caught the reflection of that name on the glass and felt something irreversible split inside me. Later, she said she was looking for the deed. "You wouldn't understand," she murmured. Maybe I did. Maybe the house had chosen its new confession. By winter, frost bloomed on the inside of the windows. She stopped opening them, and I started locking the doors she left ajar. One morning, a yellow envelope lay on the dining table, no stamp, no handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, the house, long before either of us existed, standing alone under fog. On the back, in faint graphite, "Property of Whitlock Trust. Revoked upon silence." That evening, I found her suitcase half packed, her reflection caught between 2 mirrors in the hall. "He promised it to both of us," she said. "But promises don't hold against paper." I wanted to stop her, not because I cared, but because I couldn't stand the sound of a house breathing without her. She left before dawn, and for days afterward, I heard the echo of her steps in every locked room. The clock stopped ticking. The frost faded. When I finally turned her photograph face down, the window caught my reflection and whispered it back, "The house isn't ours." After she left, I kept expecting her voice to return in the small noises, the kettle clicking off, the cupboard door sighing shut, the echo of her shoes against the marble floor. Whitlock House had never felt so enormous, or so quiet. Dust began to form along the baseboards like memory reclaiming its territory. I walked the rooms every night, counting the hums of the refrigerator, the drip of the sink, the soft mechanical breath of the heating system. Everything still worked, but nothing felt alive. Her absence had a temperature. In the mornings, the light hit her empty chair, and the glass shimmered as if refusing to hold it still. The neighbors stopped asking questions. They assumed grief explained everything. They didn't know about the letter in the yellow envelope, the one with no return address, that I now kept inside the grandfather clock. Sometimes I imagined her sending it herself, as a test. Maybe she wanted me to understand that the house was only pretending to belong to us. Maybe she had never meant ours as plural. At night, I'd open the windows she used to touch, just enough for the wind to move the curtains. The sound reminded me of her voice, soft, uncertain, trying not to exist too loudly. I started talking to the house like she did, asking questions it never answered. "Who owned you first?" I'd whisper. "Who do you keep?" And once, I swear, I heard the faintest sound of breathing from the vents, rhythmic, steady, like someone counting the seconds until forgiveness. The first change came with the rain. It began to leak through the ceiling above the stairwell, a slow, deliberate drop that stained the glass panels like ink bleeding through paper. I placed a bowl beneath it, but the sound of each fall echoed too loudly at night. so I started sleeping downstairs. That's when I noticed her scent again, lavender and iron, clinging to the hallway near the study. It shouldn't have lasted months. One evening, I found the study door slightly ajar, though I was sure I had locked it. Inside, the window was open just a crack, and the frost on the glass formed the shape of a handprint. Her hand had always left the same curve, slender, trembling slightly at the wrist. I closed it, but the air felt colder after. The house began to act strange then. The lights flickered at 6:13 every evening. The exact hour she used to set the table. The clock in the dining room started ticking again. Though no one had touched it, I checked the photograph from the envelope. It looked different. The fog in the background had thinned, revealing two faint silhouettes near the fence. My reflection trembled over them. I told myself it was an illusion, moisture warping the image. But something in my chest twisted, the way it does before a memory you tried to forget resurfaces. That night, the sound from the vents returned, louder, steadier, almost rhythmic. Like someone breathing through glass. I whispered, "Is it you?" And for a second, before the silence returned, I thought I heard her voice inside the walls. "No, it's the house." The next morning, the kitchen floor was wet. Not from the leak, it hadn't rained. The puddle reflected the ceiling lamp in perfect circles, like the glass itself was sweating. I followed the trail to the back door, where the lock had been turned from the inside. Outside, the frost had melted into thin veins across the stone path leading toward the hedge. That's where I saw it, the same yellow envelope, folded and dry, sitting upright on the step. No name, no seal. Inside, only a single key. I tried it on every lock, but none fit, until I remembered the cellar door beneath the stairs. The one Father always kept bolted. The key slid in smoothly, as if it had been waiting. The door opened to a breath of cold air, metallic and damp. The bulb flickered on, showing shelves lined with labeled boxes, dates, receipts, deeds. At the far end stood an old mirror, taller than me, covered in dust. When I wiped it clean, my reflection stared back, but something was wrong. The room behind me in the mirror wasn't the same one I stood in. It was brighter, neater. And she was there, standing beside me, expressionless. Her lips moved, but no sound came through. Then I realized she wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. At something, or someone, over my shoulder. I turned. Nothing but shelves. Yet when I faced the mirror again, she was closer, her hand resting against the glass. Fingers aligning perfectly with mine. The lights went out. The air hummed. And from the darkness, her voice whispered. Not from memory this time, but from right beside my ear. "Now you understand why the house isn't ours." I don't remember climbing the stairs after that night. Only the weight of the key in my hand and the sound of the lock turning itself. The mirror had gone dark, swallowing the light, and when I looked again, my reflection was delayed, as if it had to think before mimicking me. The house no longer felt like wood and glass, it felt sentient, listening. Every creak in the walls carried her rhythm, every flicker of light paused on her outline. I tried to leave once, packed a bag, stepped outside, but the fog that met me at the gate was too thick to see through. Like the air itself refused to let me go. The world beyond the property sounded distant, muffled. So I stayed. I kept lighting the kitchen lamp at 6:13. As if by continuing her rituals I might earn forgiveness from the walls. One evening, I saw her reflection again in the dining room window, faint but smiling. The frost tracing her outline. The clock started ticking on its own, steady and soft. I asked the house what it wanted. No answer. Only the sound of the vent breathing slowly. I set the photograph on the table, the one marked revoked upon silence, and this time I didn't turn it over. I stood before the glass until my own reflection blurred. Until I could no longer tell if I was the one watching or being watched. Outside, snow began to fall, quiet, patient, sealing every doorframe with white. Somewhere behind the walls, the mirror clicked, like a camera finishing its last exposure. And then the house exhaled.